Tonight, when you sit down to eat, you already know what's coming. Two eyes will find you and lock on, unblinking the instant your fork leaves the plate. You'll sense it before you even turn your head, that steady gaze rising up from somewhere around your knee. Most people write it off as nothing complicated. The dog wants food, end of story. But what's actually unfolding behind that gaze is far more deliberate than simple begging. And depending on how you've handled it up until now, you may have been quietly teaching your dog a habit every single evening without ever realizing it. Welcome back to Canine Mindset, the place where we dig into what's really happening inside your dog's head. If you want to understand your dog on a level most people never reach, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because by the time this video ends, dinner time is going to look completely different to you. Let's break down what's really going on. Nearly every dog owner assumes the stare means hunger, or maybe just leftover scavenger instincts hoping for a dropped scrap. There's truth in that, but it barely scratches the surface. There are at least 7 distinct forces at work behind that gaze, and most of them have almost nothing to do with what's on your plate. The first piece traces back thousands of years. Dogs descend from animals that survived by sticking close to food sources, watching, waiting, reading every twitch and movement around a meal. When your dog fixes his eyes on you at dinner, he's running an ancient survival program, one that once separated eating from starving. Every small movement near food used to carry real stakes. That instinct hasn't gone anywhere. It's simply relocated from the forest floor to your kitchen table. But here's where most owners get it wrong. They assume the staring is purely instinctual, something completely outside the dog's control. In truth, a large piece of that behavior has been taught, and usually taught by accident, one bite at a time. Think back for a second. Has your dog ever gotten even a single piece of food off your plate? Maybe you dropped some chicken once. Maybe you caved during a holiday meal. Maybe those pleading eyes just wore you down one evening and you shared a bite. If the answer is yes, even just that one time, your dog's brain logged it as confirmation that staring gets results. And here's the part that catches most people off guard. A reward that only shows up sometimes is actually far more powerful than one that shows up every time. It's the same reason people keep pulling a slot machine handle even when they lose way more often than they win. Uncertainty is what locks the behavior in, not repetition. So if your dog only scores food from your plate once in a while, that unpredictability is exactly why the stare never goes away. Here's something worth thinking about. Does your dog stare at you during every meal, or only when there's something specific on your plate, chicken, cheese, anything with a strong smell? Drop your answer in the comments, because what your dog chooses to stare at reveals a lot about what he's learned to expect from you over time. The second force behind that stare runs even deeper than food. It's about belonging. Among a group of dogs, eating together isn't just about calories. It's a shared social moment, a sign of inclusion. So when you sit down to eat and your dog is left off to the side, some part of his brain reads that as being shut out of something important. The stare isn't only, give me that. Sometimes it's closer to, why am I not part of this? There's an old fragment of wolf behavior tucked inside this too. In a wild pack, who eats first, who eats last, and who's left simply watching, all of it communicates rank and relationship. Domestic dogs still carry traces of that wiring, even after thousands of years away from the wild. So when your dog watches you eat before his own bowl comes out, part of his brain is quietly taking notes on the structure of your household, who eats when, who controls the food, and where he fits into that arrangement. It sounds like a lot to pin on dinner, but to a dog, mealtime has always meant more than just nutrition. That idea alone should shift how you think about mealtime. But it gets even more interesting once you look at what dogs are actually focused on while they stare. Most people assume a staring dog is locked onto the food itself, tracking the fork on its journey from plate to mouth. But research into how dogs read human faces tells a very different story. Dogs are remarkably skilled at reading our expressions, more skilled than almost any other animal alive. They study our eyes, our mouths, the tiniest shift in our features, because for thousands of years, reading us correctly meant the difference between safety and trouble, reward and punishment. So when your dog stares at you during dinner, part of that attention isn't on the food at all, it's on you. Your face, Your mood, whether you're relaxed, whether you're about to stand up. Whether tonight feels like a night you might share something. There's actually a bonding chemical wrapped up in this too. When a dog and its owner hold eye contact for a while, both release a hormone tied to trust and connection, the same one shared between a parent and a newborn. So in a strange, quiet way, that intense mealtime stare isn't purely about hunger. It might be your dog's way of connecting with you, the same as when he holds your gaze on the couch, just this time wrapped inside a food-driven moment. Of course, that's not the whole story either, because not every staring dog is feeling calm affection. Some dogs stare out of something closer to anxiety. Dogs who came from unstable situations, dogs who were rescued, dogs who once had to fight for food. Or dogs who never had a consistent feeding routine can develop heightened alertness around food in general. For these dogs, the stare isn't relaxed curiosity, it's vigilance. Their brain is telling them food is scarce and unreliable, so they need to track every bite that shows up anywhere nearby, just in case it vanishes. If your dog's stare feels tense, rigid, or almost desperate rather than soft and hopeful, that's worth paying attention to, because it usually says less about your dinner and more about a deeper insecurity around resources. And this brings up something every owner needs to hear, even if it's uncomfortable. There's a real difference between a dog staring out of hopeful curiosity and a dog whose staring marks the early stage of something more serious. Watch the body, not just the eyes. A relaxed dog eyeing your plate usually has a soft expression, a loose posture, maybe a slow wag. But a dog who goes completely still, stops blinking, tenses through the shoulders, or locks into a hard, unmoving stare is showing you the earliest signs of resource guarding. That doesn't mean your dog is aggressive. It means that, in his mind, food has become something worth defending. Left unaddressed, that pattern can slowly build into something bigger. The good news is that for most dogs, staring never comes anywhere close to that point. For the vast majority, it stays exactly what it appears to be on the surface: hopeful, social, food-driven curiosity. But how you respond to it matters more than most owners realize. Every time you slip your dog food from the table while he's staring, you're not just handing over a bite, you're confirming in his mind that staring at humans while they eat actually works. Over weeks and months, that turns into a dog who can't settle during any meal, yours or his own, because his nervous system has learned that mealtime always equals opportunity. If you'd rather your dog relax during dinner instead of hovering over every bite, the fix isn't complicated, but it does take consistency. Feed your dog before you sit down to eat, not after, so he isn't stuck watching you enjoy a full plate while he's hungry. Give him something engaging to do while you eat, something that pulls his focus elsewhere. And most importantly, resist rewarding the stare, even once, because as we covered earlier, even a single exception is enough to keep that behavior alive for months. Pay attention, too, to how the behavior escalates when it stops working. A dog who's learned that a quiet stare alone won't get results often climbs the ladder, from a silent gaze to a soft paw on your leg, to a nudge with the nose, to whining and eventually barking. Owners often treat each of these as separate, unrelated problems, when really it's the same request just getting louder because the quiet version stopped working. If you want calmer mealtimes long-term, the goal isn't to punish the escalation. It's to stop reinforcing any rung on that ladder, starting from the very first quiet stare. It also helps to understand that not every dog stares for the same reason, and that difference usually comes down to what he was bred to do. Dogs bred for generations to work closely alongside people, watching for hand signals, whistles, subtle cues, tend to default to staring as their go-to way of communicating about almost everything. Not just food. If your dog seems to stare at you constantly, even outside of mealtime, waiting by the door, watching you get ready in the morning, trailing you from room to room, then that intense focus at the table isn't really about food at all. It's simply how that dog talks to you all day about everything. There's one more layer worth mentioning, and it's one almost nobody brings up. Sometimes the staring has nothing to do with your food, and everything to do with his own. Dogs on a diet that leaves them undersatisfied, or dogs eating lower quality food that doesn't actually feel filling, often show more obsessive food-seeking behavior overall, not just at your table, but around the trash can, the counter, anywhere food has ever turned up. If your dog's staring has gotten noticeably worse lately, it's worth asking whether his own meals are actually satisfying him, or whether he's quietly hungrier than you realize. But underneath all of it, the biology, the psychology, the learned behavior, there's a simpler truth most owners never stop to notice. Your dog isn't just watching your food. Your dog is watching you. Out of everything in that room, every object, every sound, every movement, your dog has chosen to fix his entire attention on you. Because to him, you are the single most important thing in that space. More interesting than a window, more interesting than a noise outside. More interesting than anything else happening in the house. That's not a small thing. That's a dog who has built a large part of his world around paying attention to you. So the next time you feel those eyes on you at the dinner table, don't just write it off as begging. See it for what it really is, a blend of ancient instinct, learned expectation, social longing, quiet insecurity, and genuine devotion, all bundled into one unblinking stare. And if this video helped you see your dog a little differently, there's another one waiting for you next. One that reveals something your dog does every single night while you're asleep. Something almost no owner ever notices. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.